Did you know that 70% of leadership changes fail? That's right, 7 out of 10 leaders don't make it through the transition. And yet, most of them think they know exactly what they're doing. They're playing a game, but most don't even know the rules. This is the shocking truth. Leadership isn't just about calling the shots or sticking to a playbook. It's about understanding the hidden forces that influence your every decision. From office politics to emotional intelligence, there's so much more to leadership than what you see on the surface. In this video, we'll dive into the real game of leadership. You'll learn why your team might be playing a different game than you, how to disrupt the status quo, and why playing the wrong game could cost you everything. Ready to uncover the game most leaders don't even know they're in? Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Invisible Game. What you're really leading leadership isn't just about managing tasks. It's about understanding the invisible game that influences everything. Many leaders focus on hitting targets and staying ahead of competitors, but there's another layer. It's the unspoken dynamics, team emotions, power plays, and office politics that define the real game. According to a study by McKinsey, 70% of leadership transitions fail because leaders don't grasp the culture or the unseen elements of the workplace. Leaders often think they are playing a game of strategy, but it's much more complex. For example, communication is more than just words, it's about how people interpret your actions. Leaders who can read and respond to these invisible signals are often the most successful. A key strategy here is emotional intelligence, A. Leaders with high A, according to Daniel Goleman, are more than twice as likely to succeed in their roles. They don't just hear, they listen and understand. And this isn't a soft skill, it's a hard-hitting, strategic tool that affects everything from decision-making to conflict resolution. But most leaders overlook this aspect. They stick to the obvious, KPIs, budgets, and quarterly reports. They forget that true leadership involves navigating the unseen forces, like group dynamics and shifting power structures. When you understand the invisible game, you can turn these forces into advantages. Leaders who don't see it are often blindsided by team disengagement or unexpected resistance. The key is to actively observe and adjust to these dynamics. A strategy called situational leadership allows leaders to change their approach based on who they are leading and the context. Instead of one-size-fits-all tactics, successful leaders adapt to their environment. In essence, they're masters of reading the room. Understanding the invisible game allows you to lead without resistance. The truth is, most leadership programs ignore this. They're more concerned with giving leaders a playbook for operations, not for managing the hidden forces. But the best leaders know the game they're really in is one of influence, not authority. Understanding the invisible game means focusing on relationships, trust, and power dynamics. Chapter 2. Beyond the boardroom. The hidden leadership forces at work. Leadership isn't confined to the boardroom. It extends far beyond the physical workspace. In fact, 80% of leadership impact happens outside of meetings and official settings. This is where leaders often miss the mark. They assume the decisions made behind closed doors are the key drivers of success, but the real leadership force is invisible. It's in the hallway conversations, the lunch break banter, and the casual chats at the water cooler. These informal interactions shape how teams view their leaders. A study by Gallup found that 70% of employees' engagement is driven by their direct manager's leadership style, not their company's policies. That's powerful. It shows that leadership isn't just about setting the vision in formal settings. It's about the subtleties, the tone, the timing, and the way leaders interact with their teams in everyday moments. In these moments, the leader's emotional intelligence is put to the test. Great leaders are able to inspire through these small gestures. For instance, leaders who acknowledge small wins, even informally, foster a sense of accomplishment and motivation. This informal recognition builds trust, which leads to greater loyalty and performance. Trust is the glue that holds everything together. Without it, even the best strategies will fall apart. A unique and often overlooked force in leadership is the impact of power dynamics. Leaders must be aware of how their behavior affects the balance of power in their teams. In a groundbreaking study by the Center for Creative Leadership, they found that leaders who can balance authority with humility are far more effective than those who simply exert power. Humility doesn't mean weakness. It's about being aware of the balance. Effective leaders can wield authority without creating fear or resentment. A leader who recognizes when to step back and let others shine creates an environment of mutual respect. This humility, combined with emotional intelligence, can turn the invisible forces of leadership into advantages. The power of subtlety is key here. When leaders understand the hidden forces, they can steer their teams without forcing compliance. This is what makes leadership effective beyond the boardroom, understanding how to work with people, not just manage them. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more insights on mastering leadership. Chapter 3. Beyond the boardroom. The hidden leadership forces at work. A lot of leadership is about adjusting to new challenges and managing expectations. But the game most leaders are playing is always changing. Your company culture, team morale, and even global economic shifts can impact how successful a leader is. Leadership isn't static, it's dynamic and constantly evolving. Take innovation, for example. Leaders in industries like technology know that staying stagnant isn't an option. According to a report from the World Economic Forum, 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. This means that effective leaders must adapt to a constantly shifting landscape. They can't just rely on traditional strategies, they need to be forward-thinking. Leadership is about knowing how to move with change, not fight it. For example, Steve Jobs revolutionized industries because he understood that leadership is about embracing innovation, not fearing it. His leadership was about guiding his team through constant change, challenging them to think differently, and creating an environment that rewarded creativity. The right strategy? Leaders should empower their teams to experiment and take risks. Google's famous 20% time policy, where employees can work on personal projects during work hours, fostered innovation that led to products like Gmail and Google Maps. When employees feel trusted, they can unlock their potential, and that's a game changer. Leaders who don't get this often focus too much on control and results. They forget that today's workforce craves flexibility and autonomy. A recent Gallup report found that 54% of employees say they would leave a job for one that offered more flexibility. The more rigid the leadership, the more likely it is to lose top talent. To win the game of leadership, you need to embrace change and trust your team. Creating a culture of flexibility and autonomy, where innovation is encouraged, gives leaders the edge. This is a strategy that will allow you to play the game and stay ahead of the curve. The invisible forces, like trust, autonomy, and adaptability, are the real strategies for success. Without these, you're playing an outdated game. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe to get more strategies for leading like a pro. Chapter 4. The Leadership Blind Spot. Why your team might be playing a different game. One of the most critical things leaders often miss is that their team may not be playing the same game. While you're focused on hitting targets, solving problems, and leading the charge, your team might be looking for something else entirely. Research from Gallup found that only 33% of employees in the US are engaged at work. That means 2/3 of your team might not even be on the same page. So, what's happening here? How can you win the game if your team isn't even aligned with you? The problem lies in a leader's blind spot, what they assume their team needs versus what the team actually needs. You might think your team is motivated by numbers, promotions, or accolades, but for many employees, it's about purpose and belonging. A study by Harvard Business Review found that employees who feel a sense of purpose are 64% more likely to be satisfied with their jobs. If you can tap into your team's deeper motivations, you'll start to play the right game. One strategy to overcome this blind spot is through active listening. Leaders who regularly check in with their teams, ask open-ended questions, and genuinely listen to concerns and feedback are far more likely to lead successfully. In fact, leaders who practice open communication see 25% higher employee performance, according to a study by Zenger and Folkman. Another crucial aspect is trust. A leader who doesn't build trust is running the risk of alienating their team. Trust isn't just about being honest, it's about being transparent in your decision-making and showing vulnerability. The most effective leaders are those who acknowledge mistakes and invite feedback, which in turn builds credibility. Leadership expert Patrick Lencioni says, "Trust is the foundation of real teamwork. If you don't have trust, you won't have the loyal team that can help you win." To get on the same page, make sure you understand what drives your team. Different people have different motivations, and not everyone is driven by the same factors. Leaders must be adaptable, flexible, and willing to customize their approach based on the individuals they lead. When you can sync up with your team's personal goals, you'll see performance and engagement soar. Chapter 5. The Power of Intentional Disruption. Game-changing leadership moves. Most leaders play it safe. They rely on tested methods, play by the rules, and follow the script. But the real winners in leadership know that sometimes the game requires disruption. Innovation isn't about making small tweaks, it's about shaking up the system. Intentional disruption involves challenging the status quo and encouraging bold, sometimes uncomfortable, changes that can lead to massive growth. Take Netflix as an example. In 2007, when everyone was still renting DVDs, Netflix disrupted the entire entertainment industry by offering streaming. This wasn't just a small pivot, it was a complete reinvention of how people consumed entertainment. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings didn't play the safe game. He embraced disruption to create a new game altogether. Disruption can also happen in leadership styles. For example, traditional leadership often values hierarchy and control, but modern leadership embraces collaboration and empowerment. Leaders who understand this disruption build more engaged, creative teams. A study from Deloitte revealed that 94% of executives and 88% of employees believe a distinct culture is important to business success, and leaders who embrace cultural disruption can unlock incredible potential. The key to intentional disruption is knowing when to push and when to pull back. Leaders who constantly challenge the norms might burn out their teams, while leaders who never disrupt risk falling behind. It's all about balance. One effective strategy is to introduce change in phases. Start by making small, intentional shifts that gradually build momentum toward larger disruption. Steve Jobs famously said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." Leaders who disrupt the norm understand that change can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary for growth. Disruption creates space for innovation and new thinking. It's a strategy that makes the game more interesting and more rewarding. Chapter 6. The Legacy Play. What happens when you win the wrong game? What's the point of winning if you're playing the wrong game? Many leaders focus so much on short-term success, promotion, profits, or prestige, that they forget to think about their long-term impact. The legacy you leave behind can be far more important than any temporary victory. The truth is, if you're not careful, you could win the wrong game and destroy everything you worked for in the process. Consider the case of Blockbuster. The company was once the titan of video rental. It dominated the market, outsmarted competitors, and was on top of the world. But Blockbuster failed to understand the bigger game, the shift toward digital streaming. Instead of adapting, they stuck to their old methods, which led to their decline. In contrast, Netflix saw the game changing and pivoted, which allowed them to build a legacy of innovation. Legacy in leadership isn't about the accolades or the bonuses, it's about the lasting impact you have on your people and your company. It's about creating a culture where people thrive and innovate long after you've moved on. A powerful legacy comes from being a leader who empowers others, encourages growth, and sets up a sustainable vision for the future. The key strategy here is long-term thinking. Successful leaders don't just think about the next quarter, they think about the next decade. They prioritize building leaders within their team, making sure that the values they instill will outlast their tenure. Great leaders don't just manage, they create environments that allow others to lead and succeed. One way to play the long game is by focusing on mentorship. Research from Gallup found that employees who have mentors are 27% more likely to be engaged and 30% more likely to stay with their organization. By mentoring your team and providing them with the tools to succeed, you ensure that your legacy continues long after you leave. Finally, consider what kind of legacy you want to leave. Is it about profitability or empowerment? Is it about making your company the best in the world or making it the best for the people who work there? Leaders who think about legacy understand that the true measure of success isn't how much you've gained, but how much you've given. If you want more leadership insights and strategies, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a game-changing tip.